In just 2 minutes.
Yeah. I think you can lower. We've all pushed ours down.
All right, welcome everyone to the AI panel today. We're going to get started since it's 11:30. We have AI is a complicated topic, so we know that we can't possibly hit on everything. This is going to be mostly about how AI is shaping the future of work and education. So although if we have time, we might ask ethics and kind of global impact. But there's a good chance we won't get to that today. So we will start with a brief explanation of how AI is being used, explored, and researched by each of our panelists. We'll talk about the insights on the future of work, and then we'll dive into recommendations for preparing students, staff, and faculty, which this will be the bulk of our time today. We'll look at practical skills and employer expectations for AI use, how AI can be used in the classroom to prepare students, AI. So before getting started, I will introduce you to each of our panelists. We're thankful that you're all here today. Thank you. And Todd, I'm just going to go from your left to right. So we'll start with Todd. I'm sure many of you know Todd. Todd is the David Joyce Professor of Economics and Business at Cornell College. He is the author of multiple articles and books on topics such as understanding recessions and depressions and economic. In conjunction with Cornell students, Todd has conducted research exploring the economic impact of AI on economic inequality, as well as the impact of AI on job listings in the workforce. Barry Thomas is our next guest. Barry is the Senior Associate Dean for the Tippie College of Business at the University of Iowa, where he oversees all aspects of the faculty within the college. Barry's research focuses on improving last-mile delivery operations through mathematical optimization and machine learning research publications. He currently serves as the co-chair of the university's AI Steering Committee and is a member of the AI Academic Committee. Barry earned his undergraduate degree in mathematics and economics from another ACM college, Cornell College, where he also served as the vice chair of Cornell's Board of Trustees. So he is definitely, liberal arts is near and dear to his heart. Saad Mankarius. Robin, I actually skipped over here, so I'm going to go back to Robin. Robin Nilsson. Robin is a 2021 graduate of Cornell College, where she majored in data analytics and anthropology. She's also a wonderful artist, and recently completed a master's degree in business analytics from the University of Iowa. Currently, Robin works for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs as a data science and research manager. She is also a finalist for the prestigious Presidential Management Fellow, an extremely competitive fellowship program allowing participants an appointment to a federal agency.
I just accepted this week an offer to work for the Secret Service for that program.
Oh, wow. Okay, you probably didn't hear her, but Robin just accepted that program. Congratulations, Robin. So Robin uses AI for daily life activities as well as in her work to help her with programming capabilities and administrative support. Okay, Saad. Saad is a junior computer science major and loves all things tech. Originally from Upper Egypt, Saad has pursued a global education, having participated in the African Leadership Academy in Johannesburg, South Africa, pursuing a U.S. undergraduate education here at Cornell, and participating as a student researcher at, and I will not try the German, the German part of this, but RWTH Aachen University in Germany. Saad's research explored the use of AI to detect mental health issues by analyzing patterns in freely available data from social media. Upon finishing his undergrad, Saad is planning to pursue a PhD in machine learning. Okay, and Zach Perry, last but not least. Zach is a 2024 graduate of Cornell College, where he majored in economics in West Des Moines. Zach has continued his work at Merchants and is now working full-time as a risk management associate. Zach has been involved in the rollout of the enterprise version of ChatGPT at Merchants and will discuss the efficiencies they have experienced as a result of the implementation. So please help me welcome our guests. Okay, we're going to jump right in. So, can each of you please briefly introduce your current work with AI and into specifics a little bit more later, but just a high-level overview of what you're doing. Todd?
I'm more interested in it from an academic perspective than someone who actually uses AI, though.
Yep.
Certainly curious about
I
it.
have right now at the University of Iowa is really helping faculty to understand what AI can help them do pedagogically, as well as what we need to teach our students about AI to be ready. As well as, as well as it has also played a role in my own scholarship in that I implement AI models, specifically what's known as reinforcement learning, to solve sort of large-scale logistics problems. So I'm sort of on both sides of where AI is right now in higher ed.
Perfect, thank you.
In my second year of grad school, I actually started a company for a short period of time that focused on higher education. Part of what we were trying to do was fully encompass everything that you have done while you've been in school. Like 90% of your experience is in the classroom. You might have a 3-month internship, but is that fully representative? So we were trying to figure out how we can actually make it so that education is prioritized above that internship experience, because it more accurately represents offer. I didn't finish that. I registered it, but then I had to close it and I'm pursuing another. But I currently use it to help me at work in data science.
My involvement with AI involves two things. So I use AI as most of us do, like with ChatGPT to help with assignments and stuff like that. But I also create AI, machine learning. So I create models that detect mental illness through looking at a sample of your writing. So for example, you can copy one of your text messages, give it to the tool that I developed, then the tool will tell you, for example, if you have depression with like 95% accuracy. That's what it is.
I guess you all know me by name, but my involvement with AI has specifically been of ChatGPT at Merchants Bonding Company, based out of West Des Moines. I work in risk management, and so I've been a part of some of the conversations in terms of information security practices, how we're looking to implement this per system basis to effectively run the organization and manage the risks.
We're live streaming, so we just want that the live stream is picking up the voices. So, okay. So Barry, the first question is for you. I think as an institution, we're particularly interested in how the University of Iowa has implemented AI. I know you've been doing this for a while now, maybe a year and a half? Yeah, a year and a half. So can you talk about some of the biggest challenges or successes you see?
So I think from challenges in institution this size, but at the University of Iowa, where we have 30,000 students, thousands of faculty and staff, you know, the issue that we face is that, you know, when we survey everyone across going to have an impact, but the vast majority of folks are unsure what that impact is going to be, and I think that's pretty reasonable, given I think nobody could really say for sure. Sure how AI can impact what they do on a day-to-day basis, whether that's, you know, what they're teaching, how they're doing their teaching, or, you know, in our case, particularly how folks are doing their scholarship, or how we even do the business of the university. And so I think an important part of the role that I have now as co-chair of that campus steering committee on AI is particularly the positive impacts. Where we have seen some successes is experiment with how, for instance, AI can augment what our faculty are able to do in the classroom. So, you know, we've been experimenting, for instance, with a piece of AI software that allows our students to practice presentations and gives them feedback on, you know, the gestures that they've used, the tone that they're using, the facial expressions that they're doing. And you might say, well, you know, we should do that, you know, in the classroom. And I agree that would be fantastic. But we also, you know, at the Tippie College of Business, we teach an online MBA that has, you know, over 1,400 students in it, none of whom are on campus. They all are, you know, frankly, scattered across the country. And so how do we at that scale, you know, that kind of feedback? And we found, you know, just as one example, that this AI tool that's called PitchVantage has been a really powerful feedback tool. Now, it can't do everything. It can't evaluate the substance, and that's where, again, that faculty member is certainly in the loop. And I think as we think broadly about how we want to approach AI at the university, it is importantly that human is in the loop. We think that isn't going away. Faculty from cinematic arts, one of whom is a screenwriter, and talking about the ways, you know, that AI won't replace that creativity, but he'd identified in the conversation several ways in which he thought, you know, actually this could benefit me as a screenwriter. It certainly could benefit, you know, showrunners who are running the shows that he writes. And so we're talking a lot about, you know, AI as amplifying that human potential. And
I'm gonna add to that, because I used PitchVantage in my classes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so PitchVantage, it actually told you the model it was using. It said you need to like have variation in the pitch and variation in the speed at which you're talking, and then it identified that through your presentation, and it scored you and it showed you where you were missing, you know, where you were lacking. But I thought that people could easily manipulate that, and in reality, like maybe it wasn't a very good speech. You just varied your pitch a lot and same with the speed when you talk. So like there's definitely flaws to it, but it was interesting to see how certain people were doing that easier than others. Some people really had to put an effort to, yeah. It's actually just like a model that scores you. The AI is actually just the detection mechanism.
Right, it's a detector. So.
Great.
Well, but I will say with PitchVantage, I mean, one of the interesting things, education faculty that we have at Tippie, there's flaws with any of these technologies, right? But it certainly, I think, allowed us to do things we weren't able to do before.
Right. Thank you, Barry. So Todd, what are you seeing as the current impact of AI on the U.S. economy? Just a tiny little question there. And will these trends continue in the long run?
So my vantage point here is a macroeconomist, big picture. And if you look at the history of technology and understate the impact in the long run. So right now, from a macro perspective, we're in the overstating technology phase, right? I mean, there isn't a lot of macro evidence that AI is changing the world. We see no big boom in AI investment outside of kind of the big four technology firms. We see no increase in aggregate productivity in the US. We see no changes in things like growth. I'd say, well, maybe there's not a lot happening at the highest level. Having said that, though, there is change happening, right? But once again, I think maybe while we can pick out specific examples of where change is happening in specific industries, once again, the change right now is very preliminary, right? So I just pull out my paper here because I want to make sure I get my facts right. So there's a recent McKinsey report that said that 75% of global knowledge workers are using so 900 companies. Here's human in the loop. There's a human available judgment. And so one definition of intelligence is plus judgment, right? Prediction. AI is very still a guy's force. Now, is it going to augment the labor force? Absolutely, right? But a lot of that change is still to come.
So just to follow up to that, are there certain others that you can talk about today?
To be determined, right? I mean, I think HR is one of.
Like, hey, that's reliable. It's just gonna take them a couple of other.
Incredibly useful at doing repetitive structured tasks, similar in advancement right now to what somebody would be able to produce if they were programmed. Structured tasks that are repetitive in nature, those types of things are work that you can then ask the AI tools into the final outcome, right? Right? It's not always just based off of the numbers. So I think some of that thing.
And then Robin, the VA, they actually don't allow artificial intelligence tools, but Robin is actually using them on the side on your phone. So I'll have you talk a little bit about that. So let's start with Robin, how you're using AI.
So data security is a huge thing where I work. We deal with human subject research for their health purposes, via health research. If you have any patient data going into ChatGPT, it's a big no-no. But every job that you have, you're forced to learn different tools, especially in analytics where things are moving so quickly. Everywhere you go, you might be using a different language, different visualization platforms, all of these. And school provides you with an understanding of what goes into creating the models you need to create, what buttons are available, but how do you find them, how do you implement them based on the new structure, the data you have. And I don't want to annoy my boss, right? I don't want to be like, hey George, can you talk to me again for like the 10th time today? I know you have other stuff to do, but I really need you to show me where this is. That's really disruptive. So it is important for you to be resourceful. Think, what resources do I have that can make it so I'm not annoying my boss, so I can be more efficient? So what I annoy him for is to help me understand enough about what I'm working with so that I can ask the right questions in ChatGPT without giving it any sensitive data. And through that, I've been able to pick up things very, very quickly at my job, and it hasn't been a
Programming piece, Robin? No, didn't you asked
Oh.
to program with it?
Yeah, so when I was in school, I took Python and R, but in my job now, I need to use more SQL, more SAS, VBA, and I'm using those in like within Access and also within Excel. And so I've had to use ChatGPT to help me understand how to structure the things I'm trying to do. But obviously I need to understand working with, and ChatGPT doesn't know that, and so I still need to have an understanding of coding and structuring so that I can apply it.
Thanks, Robin. Zach?
Yeah, so at Merchants, being a part of the risk team, we obviously took the approach implementation. So one of the things that I did immediately was I created an insurance analyzer. And so what this can do is it can take basically all of our company insurance policies. We have building property, we have business income, we have general liability, we have an umbrella, all those different ones. And I can just ask it to pull me information. Right? Sit of that, and post it into the insurance analyzer. Right? But it provides an amazing starting. I don't know what corporate insurance is. I'm a sponge to the knowledge. I'm learning it, right? But if I can see, okay, right, those are some of the things that we're considering at Merchants from an operational efficiency standpoint. Is the summarization component. And its ability to point you in the right direction very, very quickly.
Thank you. So Barry, I'm sure many in the room are thinking, yeah, but we're not a big company and we don't. How do we?
Basically been 24 hours a day, and now we were able to, take a pop around and read all your web pages and do all kinds of Googling, but this is just far more efficient for them and thus creates a much better, opportunity for us to recruit that student. We certainly on the HR side, as you've said, and are now, this is also academic side, sort of, and I think and we're going to, make some investments. Some of those investments aren't going to lead to kind of a viable alternative to, but some of them are, and I think you're right that at this point we haven't seen this sort of macro impact, but I think the fear I would have as a firm saying, or a university or a college saying, look, there hasn't been any impact, I'm not going to do anything with this, is that there's all of a sudden going to be impact at some point in the future. We don't know when that is. We don't necessarily know what those things are. But if we're not investing today and preparing now, if it wasn't before, we're certainly entering, an environment of probably significant cost pressure more efficiently and more effectively. And I think AI is offering that. And another thing we've done, like you've done Enterprise ChatGPT, is we're now in a pilot phase of Copilot. We call them test flights because piloting and Copilot is weird. Copilot is Microsoft's kind of implementation of ChatGPT across the Office suite, and it gives us the same enterprise capabilities that you were discussing. But and it's very interesting. So what we do is we run a number of sessions where we have people just talk about the efficiency they gained using these tools. It's organically growing as we all learn to use it better, but there's, for somebody like me who gets a whole lot of email, the ability to go and ask it to summarize those emails from the last week and find, areas where somebody has asked me for a to-do or an email that I haven't replied to, I could manually do that in Outlook. It just would take me a really long time. And so this does it within seconds, right? And so then there's those sort of micro efficiencies, the 2 minutes that you're talking about. And so I think more as we go along, we'll more and more learn what those things are that are really making a difference for us.
As a student, Saad, how are you using AI?
Do my assignments. I mean, just like, so I'm in a circuits class now. We design electric circuits. And one of the things that my professor Darren Sherman discussed in first day of class was, let's say you want to write this paper about how this circuit works, and you don't have, it's just like not so organized, and you just want to enhance the style, the readability of that paper, go ahead and use ChatGPT. What is it going to do is it's going to preserve the same academic content in there, but just put it in a more readable format, so that information can flow better and people can read it and understand your point easily. So yeah, I mean, I use ChatGPT sometimes to do that, to just like enhance. I mean, English is not my first language, so when I write things, for one thing, I have so many like spelling mistakes and stuff, but also things with like flow, with like use of words, all that. I use ChatGPT to complement that. Also, I use other tools to write code for my like computer science classes, and most of it is like the repetitive code. So for example, I wrote a function that does some sorting, but I need some comments to actually make it more readable, or I need to refactor some code to just make it look more efficient and more readable. So ChatGPT can do this in seconds. 2 summers ago, I had an internship as a software developer and a database. So we need to just like translate the code from one language to another. Now me sitting there and actually copying and pasting, like translating every line by line, that would take ages. ChatGPT can do it in seconds. Because it's, again, repetitive, not so much creative, no judgment task, that it's just better off me saving my time and have the machine do it for me in seconds.
So we know AI is becoming really important for programming and some of the more technical data analytic type work. This is for any of the panelists that want to chime in here. I think many of those that teach in the liberal arts, the humanities, are wondering how this might affect careers in those sectors, how students in those areas prepare for a future with AI, and what does that look like? Anyone want to take that?
It's a loaded question, but I think that one of the biggest things, at least how merchants is viewing AI and ChatGPT, is it's a personal assistant, right? They're viewing it from that side of the world, is everyone in the company is getting a personal assistant. And they're tailoring, they're beginning to, they haven't fully yet, they're beginning to tailor job listings and job postings to include some of those facets like prompt engineering and stuff like that. As if it was Excel, right? Everyone should have some sort of Excel knowledge, everyone should have some sort of ability to refine and communicate with AI in some fashion. And when we say AI, there's really two facets. There's the large language models like ChatGPT. There's also the machine learning and predictive side of it as well, which Saad has been more working with. But those are some of the areas where I think that it's useful to start to get a grasp on some of those things. Clean up data literacy, right? Do you know how to structure a data set in general, right? How should it look, right? You have to be literate in those fields, right? Every column should be a characteristic of a row, right? And in each row should reflect a record that's unique and specific, right? That's very structured, that's one type of data, right? That's very structured. But cleaning up on some of those types of things, I think would help anybody.
So we recently asked this question of some of the industry partners we have and sent out a survey. And interestingly, the response rate so far has been a little bit thin. We have an N of 5 out of hundreds. And I think part of what we're finding is that a lot of companies, as we've been discussing here, don't yet know what it is that they're going to want students to know. But again, they come back to, we know there's going to be something that happens. And so the view that we've taken in the College of Business is kind of twofold so far. One, we recognized right when ChatGPT 3.5 came out in November of 2022 that it was going to be possible that somebody was going to feed prompts from our business communication class into that GPT, and it was going to be able to write an essay. And it could. And so our group went and they spent that winter break looking at that. Maybe many of you have done the same and found, it could reliably turn out C work. But I think students at Tippy don't necessarily want to do C. I hope they don't want to do C work, right? And so what we started to do though then was look at how can a tool like ChatGPT, one of these large language models, how can it help you be more efficient and more effective in your writing? And so we started to devise assignments that help students sort of gain that proficiency in prompt engineering, but also in recognizing that, at least today's LLMs, they're not capable of writing in your voice. They're not capable of being entirely factual about your writing and so on. And so we're helping students understand kind of where there are strengths in using these tools and where they're not. And what many of our students now report is that they actually are better writers than ChatGPT, and so they don't wholesale use it for assignments. And then I think the other piece of that as we prepare our students is that, at least our view in the business school, I hope this becomes the view of the university, is that every student's going to need, a basic conceptual understanding of AI. And so what we have done is, we have a core classes that every student in the business school takes in the foundation. It's really an easy step to go from teaching linear regression to kind of a conceptual understanding of what a neural net does. And so we now have made that connection, but in doing so, we also talk about the fact that, when you train these models, right, your data has a certain bias and image bias. And then certainly these privacy questions become paramount as we talk about, I think, any about that. And so we're able to now inject sort of this base level of knowledge across, all of the students that we have in Tippy. And I think that's really important as we train them for the future, because we don't know exactly what they'll be doing, but this helps give them that that base knowledge so that they can hopefully be more adaptable with whatever it is that comes.
So stemming off of your point about the models and the language element of it, I think a lot of people look at AI and think it's this magical thing because it feels human. Underneath that language component is just a statistical model most of the time. And in the past, the output would be a couple numbers in a few boxes, but now what's interesting is it's being translated into language. And that itself is a model. And so as we use it, I mean, as you were saying, ChatGPT doesn't write with your voice. But in the past, the goal was kind of to eliminate your voice. It was to try and write in the most like matter-of-fact academic way. And now with ChatGPT, people are on a mission to make it seem like they're not. If you write in that like perfect voice, it's actually, it looks like you're lazy rather than smart, which I think is interesting.
So once again, just kind of give a little historical perspective on this. If you go back to 1950, exist like college professor look completely different, right? Jobs are just collections of tasks. So it's going to be faster, right? But this is a continuation of something that's been going on for a long time, right? If once again, intelligence is prediction and judgment, that judgment component is going to continue to be very important. This summer I worked with a couple of students. I see them in the back. They're Jack and Keegan, right? Good job, guys. They were looking at online discussions and job listings, right, related to AI. Also involves looking for people with high levels of communication skills, right? Once again, you need a human in that room. And so, I think there is going to continue to be a role for the liberal arts. If I could just speak, though, to the professors out there right now, this is very unsettling for many of us, because in many ways you can think about AI as kind of post-enlightenment, right? AI is fundamentally about a technology that we do not understand how it works, right? There's nobody in the world that understands how this works. And so it is fundamentally unknowable in many ways, that we know the structure, but we do not understand, right? It's kind of beyond our human understanding at some level, how these transformers and things work. And so, it is unsettling. It's deeply unsettling, right? To those of us who've kind of dedicated our lives to understanding how things work, to begin to move to a world of where things pop out, right? And it only puts more emphasis on the role of humans who have broad understanding and judgment, in my opinion.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take questions from the audience at this point. We have 15 minutes, and so because we are live streaming and have one microphone, we are going to need you to come up and ask your question, if you would, and then we'll take some questions from the live stream audience as well. So please step forward. If you don't, I have more questions I can ask, but I'll open it up at this point. Yeah? If you wouldn't mind sharing your name as well.
I'm Josie, and I'm an environmental science minor and a studio art major. And I was just curious what your thoughts are on the environmental impact of AI and like the degree of energy that it takes to run and cool off these. I have a vague understanding that it's a lot of clean water going to cool off these huge engines that we're going to be building more and more of as we make systems that are more dependent on AI. And I can't help but think, is there another way we should be using those resources instead of AI, or is AI, should that be at the forefront?
Great question, thank you. Okay, Robin?
Great.
So that's an interesting question. I mean, certainly some AI uses a lot to run, but I find that honestly, it depends, because one of the things that I do is I work with massive, massive databases, And without AI as a tool that we're using at the VA integrated into our systems, I have to use SQL to query things. And SQL is a very fundamental language to be coding with. And it takes sometimes 30 minutes for one SQL query to run, just because of how massive the database is. But within ChatGPT, I mean, I'm in a second. It's because it's like much more efficient. I don't think it's actually using more water or anything like that. It's just a different way of creating a search engine. And it's more effective and efficient. I don't know if that makes sense, but so it depends, I suppose.
Energy kind of on the front end to do that, to train these models. I mean, I don't know anybody that had on their bingo card that Microsoft would, enter an agreement to restart 3 Mile Island, right? It's crazy to me. And now, Google's entering into using some sort of nuclear microreactor. These things with AI, it might be worth the trade-off of, in the short term, using that water. I mean, the things that you are doing with healthcare data to save lives, right? I mean, I think that matters too, and there's a trade-off. And so as we look long term, I think there's 2 things that are going to happen though, who now have a very clear need, but there'll be other clean energy technologies that they're going to invest in. So I think that's a net positive in the long run. The other thing that's happening, in particularly the generative AI models, right? Part of the reason they use so much energy when they train is they're built on this concept of layers. And they have, thousands of layers. And each layer, as you do the training, you're using this sort of backward propagation and updating the values, right? That each of those is taking cycles on the GPU and using energy. Well, we have faculty even in Tippy whose research is looking at how do I, create, smaller neural network models that have the same efficacy as these sort of blunt, larger instruments. And that research is in its infancy. And we get 10 years out, people are going to have figured out how to optimize these models, and we'll put in only the nodes that we need, and that will, I think, go a long way towards addressing some of these questions. Just like, if you look at the physical space, the first transistors were really large. You couldn't build them into handheld radios, right? And within 10 to 15 years, we went from, hand-sized transistors to, much smaller ones, then ultimately by the 70s, integrated circuits, right, that fit on your index finger. So I think that's exactly the progression that we'll see here with these neural net technologies.
Can I add to that? So yeah, speaking about efficiency, I feel like in a way AI is kind of becoming, hear me out, it's kind of like the Stanley Cup. Suddenly everyone wants a Stanley Cup. Suddenly every company needs AI. And it's like, is it actually making things more efficient, or are you just trying to prove a point that you're still on the cutting edge? You're trying to have this thing, like, okay, we have it now, but is it worth it? And not in every case. Because when you're creating AI, like sometimes, yeah, you could create a smaller model that's more efficient, that meets people's needs better. Or maybe the user doesn't fully understand what questions to ask to get what they want. And so maybe a form would be better where they see all the options. Right now, we're just kind of being flooded with AI when who knows how much of that's actually going to stick around.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, I'm Declan. So kind of going back to that generative AI, with like DALL-E and stuff, what's your opinion on it taking art from artists? I think it should traverse this issue of just blatantly stealing art, because it's getting so much better and it's getting very hard to distinguish from actual art.
So obviously there are lots of types of art, but going back to the use of language and how language in a way is art, just like it's also a model that we learn. It's also something we can creatively apply. And since AI has become very good at applying language and writing things in the most proper way, now the mission isn't to write properly, it's to write with personality. It's to write with a genuine sense of yourself. If someone is reading something you wrote and they think, sounds like AI did this, it's embarrassing. And similarly with music, with visual art of other kinds, now I think it's really pushing people to try harder to
So Dolly is a one model within the ChatGPT enterprise version. One thing that we're seeing right now, our marketing department is going crazy. I mean, they love it. So it can take, there's a text to image, right, and then there's a image to text models that they're developing. There's text to video that they're coming out with, right? But you have to describe what you want to see, right? It's a probabilistic model. It's not deterministic. Well, at least ChatGPT, and that means that I can give it the same prompt to different It's essentially the same prompt, the same time, one after the next, and it will come. Right? It's not doing the same thing over and over again. In the trainings with ChatGPT, one of the examples they used of this was, show me an image of astronauts laying in a bed of flowers in space. Right? You give that simple prompt to it, 2 different times, you get 2 different images. But I think that the creativity component of it, right? That is one of the things that we've, I think, all been talking about. Is the creativity component still needs to be there, right? If I'm looking to display a video, I'm looking to create an image, I still have to explain to the model or prompt it essentially to what I want or how to tweak it, how to tailor it for what I'm specifically doing. I think that's always going to be a key piece there.
I just add to that, Jody?
Yes.
Just real quick. I mean, I agree that we want to be forward-looking and more creative, but the truth is that it does create images. It does, one of the other areas that's really in dispute right now is music generation, which has gotten a lot more powerful, and it clearly is rifting things that are in copyrighted music, and you can't do that, right, as an artist. So why should a GPT be able to do that? And so I would argue that it's really going to come down to the enforcement of copyright and what do we think, and those legal cases are already happening. And so what you're seeing is a lot of the companies that are doing this now are licensing training data so that they can include these things right in their models, or Adobe who'd already done that in their product so that they didn't run into this same issue. So I think there's an underlying copyright issue, and I think people like OpenAI so far have gotten away with it, but I don't think that's going to happen forever. I think you'll see a lot more licensing agreements happening.
Okay, we just have a minute left, so just one last question for all of the panelists, just rapid fire. What is one or 2 skills that we all should be developing to, stay in tune with a future with AI?
You've taken first-year seminar, they're all familiar with Daniel Kahneman and thinking fast and thinking slow, and system 1 and system 2 thinking. It's interesting. ChatGPT is actually really good at system 1 thinking. In other words, thinking like humans think, meaning incorporating the same biases that humans have. It's actually, maybe counterintuitively, not as strong at very, very strong logical thinking. And so, once again, I think communication and that really in-depth logical thinking about complex issues which is really basically the liberal arts in a nutshell, is fundamentally important.
I think that one of the things that AI will never be able to do is ask the right question. It can give you answers, but it can't ask the question. So it's related to thinking deeply about an issue. How do I go about framing the problem that I'm going to solve and asking the right questions. And I agree, I would say that too is part of the fundamental education of liberal arts. And I think that's something.
Sometimes you're not smart enough to even know how to form the right questions, and the best resources ultimately are each other. And I mean, staying connected with Cornell after graduation has been really great because it keeps you connected to people who are learning, who are maybe learning new things, who have had different experiences since graduating. Like now I'm going to talk to these guys and I'm going to leave here with new knowledge I wouldn't have had before. And so keeping up with technology, keeping up with understanding what people are doing, and ultimately that ends up relating back to AI, things like that. It's really about staying connected with each other and being in connection with where you went to school. Because especially in technology, in a field that is just moving so quickly, you can lose touch very fast, just within a few years, if you aren't trying to stay connected with the people who are researching and on that cutting edge, which is usually higher education institutions. So that's my advice. Stay connected with Cornell. Even after you leave.
So I got two pieces of advice that I will try to wrap up pretty quick. So my friend Aras, he's a math major here. Pretty advanced math class, and his final, it would take like a couple of days to finish. And when we tried to put it on ChatGPT, it just didn't help. I mean, ChatGPT couldn't actually do that advanced level of analysis, just like how Dr. Todd was just talking. When it gets really deep into like certain logical / analytical areas, even like with something really creative, but if you're just really good at doing something, if you got really good at doing your own thing, AI would never be able to actually replicate your abilities. So my first advice is to try to be really, really good at what you're doing, and that way you will stay safe. The other thing is to just try and understand how AI works, even if it was like some pretty basic principles of how AI works. Like you got a huge data set, it simply just looks at patterns in the data and try to repeat them on new data that it hasn't seen before. If you're into math, taking like some linear algebra class, that would definitely enhance how, like, because it's just like some matrix multiplication, matrix factorization at the very basic level, some algorithm or read like certain piece of code that does some AI work. So yeah, just get really good at doing something. Whatever your own thing is, just get really good at doing it. Also try to familiarize yourself with how AI works.
I would say the biggest thing I would do, and I currently am doing this at Merchants, but we're currently going through and we're looking at what processes can be automated, right? How would that look? What would that look like, right? When would it be appropriate to automate? When would it be appropriate to not automate? And I think coming up with maybe a top 5 or a top 10 things that you do on a day-to-day basis that are built into, either is it email, that has the most meetings that it can help with. What is it that takes up the majority of your time, or a task that you really just don't like doing? Can that be automated? Can that be optimized in a way? I would probably start with that. Obviously, I'm closing for what has been a laundry list of ideas, but I think that's one key thing I would add. I read an article. I'll finish with this. I was reading an article that the average C-suite executive had to, in 2020, was attempting to learn on average one new skill every 3 years, and that more recently that has become one new skill every 18 months. A new skill could be coding, a new skill could be Excel, a new skill could be a new software. And so that time horizon has already started to shrink, and I think with tools like AI, it will continue to do so. So learning how to learn. I also think that that's a big thing that Cornell has taught me and will be continued to be emphasized.
Jody, can we announce the state dialogue?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and I am the president of Sustained Dialogue. And in Sustained Dialogue, we focus on conversing and really learning those important communication skills on how to talk about issues that we are currently facing or new ideas that haven't been discussed. So this year we're focusing on AI in education. Our first meeting is at 11:30 on Monday, October 28th. And we would love if some of you would attend to really discuss how education, its benefits, how it's lacking, and then what it means for the future of Cornell and higher education.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, the panelists, a few of them can stay a little bit later if anybody has some burning questions they didn't want to put out there in front of everybody. But a huge thank you to our panelists. This was incredibly helpful. We touched on more than I thought we'd be able to, so kudos to our group here. Thanks so much.